great to be back here. This has been a lot of fun so far. I did not sell an internet company at 16, so I can tell you like all about the organization, but really highly efficient organizational structure means that I'm not that great at raising money yet. So instead what I can do is tell you about Congo. And what I want to tell you first is my favorite Congo story ever, because this exemplifies the country. So it's a little bit of a dark topic, but I want to give you permission to laugh. It is kind of a funny story. So first, I love this map because it has Africa, which by the way is a continent and not a country. That's Congo in the middle of it, and you can kind of follow the arrow. So this is how big Congo is. It's about the size of the US east of the Mississippi. It's a tremendously large country. And back in May, I was visiting Congo. I was in a place called Goma, which is here in the North Kivu province, literally right by Rwanda. And if you've ever heard of Goma, it's probably because a lot of the violence and insecurity that you hear about in Congo is centered around Goma. And when I was there in May, there happened to be a battle going on between a rebel group called M23, or the M23 movement, and the Congolese government forces. And so, I was having, this is me, it's my friend Emmanuel, Patrick, and Joel. We're meeting next to beautiful Lake Kivu, discussing a leadership training program for young people in Congo. And in the background, you could hear, it sounded a lot like thunder, but it wasn't thunder. It was mortar fire and some machine gun fire. And it really wasn't a very safe situation at all. So my first night there, I will say, and I don't really want to dive headfirst in this debate, but my cadets experience here was completely inadequate. So I was about to go to bed my first night in Congo, and it occurred to me that, hey, I'm kind of in a war zone. And do you go to sleep? Like, do we have shifts? I really had no idea what to do. And so I asked my host, hey, should I be concerned about some sort of fighting happening overnight? And he said, no, don't worry about it. They don't fight at night. I said, I was very reassured. I was like, there's some sort of code of war here. There's some sort of and I expressed this to him, to which he replied, no. They just don't have flashlights, so they can't see. And that's when I realized that the element of Congo keeping me safest was its severe underdevelopment. And that's the best story I know about Congo, because it just ties your mind in knots, and it's a ridiculous place. For those of you who might be more quantitative, I put together this table. You can see Canada. You are ranked 11th in the Human Development Index, which is pretty good, just a few spots behind the United States where I'm from. GDP per capita is over $50,000. You guys are doing quite well. But even when you compare Congo to Ghana, Kenya, some other African countries that are considered peers, maybe $1,500, $1,600, $800 GDP per capita, still very much impoverished compared to Canada. But Congo is actually ranked dead last on the Human Development. It might be tied with Somalia, but dead last in the Human Development Index out of 186 countries. And the GDP per capita is about $230, which is well less than $1 a day. This is an incredibly challenging environment, and it's very, very difficult to do the work that we do. But that's precisely why we're there. This is our branded logo. Congo Leadership Initiative is a group that I founded when I was in university, a couple years after I graduated from Ridley. And CLI trains young leaders in Congo. We empower youth because we believe that the solutions in Congo will ultimately come from young people there and not from people like me or you. We've had a lot of success. We have trained in 3 years 350 young people, and we plan to get to 1,000 by the end of this fiscal year in June. But I do want to stop right there because I can see something happening, and it's really interesting to see this. It's I think what is best called the idealization of social entrepreneurship. And this is actually what starts to happen when I keep talking about CLI and you all tell me how great and dynamic I am. And I'll let you read it, but this is probably my favorite cartoon ever, because this kind of stuff happens all the time. The annual forum for totally awesome social entrepreneurs, and there's this red carpet and VIPs and a bouncer. And then you have these gentlemen over here who appear to be a little bit down in their luck. And they're talking about what the conference is, and they say, oh, who are they? They're extraordinary leaders creating innovative models that spark large-scale change for seemingly intractable social problems. And yeah, we've trained 350 youth in Congo, and I'm pretty excited about that, but there are like 35 million youth in the age bracket that we're trying to reach. We're nowhere close to dealing with that problem yet. And, to be totally honest with you, I go to bed most nights feeling like I'm very bad at my job. And I think all that is to say that it's an incredibly, incredibly difficult task. This is a quote from a gentleman, Dom Elder Camara. This guy was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. And this is what he had to say about his life of service and social entrepreneurship shortly before he passed away. And you can read it, but as social entrepreneurs, at the end of the day, we must expect the desert. This isn't innovative, dynamic, disruptive social change that everyone throws awards at you for, and it's really cool because you can make a living while you're saving the world. That's not really what's going on here. And the reason I tell you this is not because I don't think we should be talking about social entrepreneurship in the context of education. But when we do, we need to be very careful to talk about the direction more than the milestones, or the kilometer markers, I guess. It's a very, very difficult thing, and it is a complete grind. And the brief moments of being on stage and telling you about the wonderful things that are happening are very rare compared to the daily knockdowns and get-ups and scuffles that you feel trying to get an organization off the ground. The only way it will ever work is if you have people running these organizations who have a very clear and very strong true north and are able to have a clear belief about what they're doing. So for the rest of my talk, I can't speak for other social entrepreneurs, but I can tell you a little bit about my experience and my experience here and what created that for me. So this is L'Étranger. I promised to shout out to Dr. Foster, who made me read this book. I took French in grade 12, which, I'm trying to be very clear. I didn't know my French teacher would be in the audience. I'm really bad at French, and the only reason that I can do work in Congo is because of the outstanding efforts of people like Dr. Foster to get me to an adequate level. Please let me. I saw a grading sheet she was doing earlier today. I had no idea what was going on. A bunch of verb tenses and stuff. But L'Étranger, for those of you unfamiliar, is an existential novel. It would have been difficult for me to understand in English. It's really, really heavy. And I didn't completely get it, and if anyone here is kind of into this stuff, I apologize for just butchering your whole philosophy. But my understanding of L'Étranger was, hey, we're all going to die, so what does it matter anyway? And for someone, who came here and just worked really hard and tried to be the best, and was frankly probably kind of a jerk about it, I'd say a lot of the times, that was really alarming, because I was like, well, why am I trying so hard? Why am I working all the time? And I had to develop some sort of worldview that made sense for this. And this is grade 12, towards the end, I'm winding down, I'm about to go to university, and it became clear to me that the only legacy we leave behind is the impact we have on others. And that was something that only came about because I was scared to death of this book. And I think this is what it looked like, right? This is the same cover, so I'm a little bit nervous even looking at it now. But I was able to develop this philosophy that completely drove the way that I spent my time in university, and is probably now informing what I spend my time now doing professionally. So this is really critical for me. So another way to describe this, I call it an equation as if this is a real thing that I didn't just make up a couple weeks ago, but this is what I call the human capital equation, and this is, I guess, a pseudo-mathematical way to look at how I view the world. So I think we have time and talent. These are the things that we have at our disposal to create value. And the types of value we create have basically four main destinations. So value for yourself, value for your loved ones, value for your acquaintances, which probably boils down to your coworkers more often than not, and value for people who you may never meet or may not be born until after you die, value for the world. And really, the only difference in terms of how I view things and what's important to me is that I have a really strong emphasis on this last part. But there's another critical element of this that I think is important to teach if we're going to talk about social entrepreneurship and education, and that's that this is finite, right? So if we're gonna displace value and create more for the world, you are making sacrifices. You are, sleeping on an air mattress for 4 months. You are, not going on dates. You are not working in a workplace that has a lot of perks. You're doing a lot of these things that do hurt, and you feel them, and it makes things really, really difficult. And too often, I think, schools and organizations in society dive into this whole social entrepreneurship, like unicorn fantasy, thinking that, hey, it's perfect. We create social value. we can make a living, we can create this world that's wonderful. And honestly, there are a lot of things about it that I love, otherwise I wouldn't be doing it. But if we don't understand the finite nature of this equation, it's going to be impossible to create real social entrepreneurs who can sustain change for as long as it takes to actually move the needle in development. So I had some questions. I think these might end up being the questions that we answered after the first breakout session, but I have some suggestions, I think, that are hopefully helpful for us as we move on into the next little cocktail table discussion. But what will future leaders need in terms of social entrepreneurship? If we think social entrepreneurship is important to our educational values, I like to give answers based on the problems they're solving. So, if we talk about the problems that we're dealing with here, the problems preventing social entrepreneurship are any one or all of these four, right? Selfishness, apathy, laziness, and/or fear, with a strong emphasis on the last one. So if we're going to make this a priority as educators and as a school and as a community, then the types of solutions we should be looking for are selflessness, empathy, toughness, and a lot of courage. And all of these things are really important if we're going to create graduates who are able to make a real difference in the world. And finally, in terms of preparing grads for success, these are suggestions based on my experience here. And I think a lot of this tells you that Ridley's doing some incredible things. And Ridley's doing a lot of this right. But as we look to institutionalize this and as we look to make it something that is a part of our core philosophy as a school, these are some suggestions I have. So teach self-awareness and introspection. Teach people to look inside themselves and understand what their true north is, what makes them tick, and what moves them forward in life. And also teach observation. People who can see in other people what their values are and can maybe reflect some of that and understand it. Emphasize decisions based on opportunity cost. Stop telling students that they can have it all. It's not true. And if the sooner that students understand this, the better they'll be able to create a world and a future that makes sense to them and creates value for other people. They'll understand exactly what kind of tough decisions have to be made. I deliberately use the word frighten here. I think that we, a lot of expose students to new ideas, show them new ways of thinking. Scare the heck out of them, honestly. Like, you really need to get them in a place where they're like, this is alarming to me and I need to figure out a way to solve it, because that's what happened to me. And I think that it was one of the more useful things that could have happened. So frighten them with new ideas and theories. Don't just expose them. Make sure that they understand them. Challenge students beyond their current abilities. I think we talk a lot about doing this, and I think that in different areas of the school, this is something that, pushing the envelope, right, is something that we talk about doing a lot. But very rarely are we really successfully able to take young people and move them outside of what they can currently do. We need to put them in a place where they can learn from failure. And that's this next point, right? Create a culture of productive failure. If we continue to talk about failure as a bad thing, then challenging students beyond their current abilities is counterproductive because they continue to screw up. But those people who will really change the world and will really be able to create solutions to extremely complex, very difficult, and enormous problems need to understand that you have to fail in order to succeed. So make it a good thing. Talk about it in a good way. Failure can be very positive if it's brought about the right way. And finally, this I think has to do really with this talk in general. I think we need to be more vulnerable. There's a lot of these types of TED Talk-like speeches that become press releases. And you talk about things like the 350 young leaders and dynamic change and all this stuff we're doing. And the reason that happens is because of a real fear of actually opening up and talking about how hard things can be. But if we can do that as a community in all fields, then we'll be able to create the type of change that I think moves us forward. So those are my suggestions. Oh, you know what? I have another one. This one, yeah, I just thought of that in one of the PowerPoint. Understanding the value of direction, right? So this is the main point that I'm trying to bring about here. I don't think we should focus on all of the acclaim and awards that you can win. I've never won an award for CLI. I think that a lot of time, this is probably something Ridley can do a lot better. I think I have like 5 clocks that Ridley gave me for getting good grades. And I thought that's what it was all about, right? I was like, I'll just get the clock, and then I'm good to go. My parents' den is just filled. So I think we need to understand that even though it might be incremental progress at times and it's very difficult to move forward, at least we're moving in the right direction and we're doing things for a reason that matters to us. And that's what I mean by direction. That's what we need to understand the value of. So again, this is something that's actually on the back of my computer screen every day. And I think that this is really the only way that we can continue to grow as an organization. So I'll be outside. I hope to talk to you more in the future, and thanks again for having me.